Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Sandra Bland. I'm the Executive Director of the Earl Carl Institute, and we're proud to be hosting this event tonight. You will hear a little bit more about the format of the program in just a little bit from our first moderator, but it's my privilege at this time to introduce Congressman Al Green. Congressman Green has been a supporter of criminal justice reform. He's on the front lines when it came to pushing for body cameras, and he's been supportive of us here at the Institute. So please join me in welcoming Congressman Green.
Let me thank Ms. Guidry very much, and as the first person to come before you, I think it appropriate that we acknowledge and thank all of the persons who worked so hard to make this event possible. So let's give them a big hand, please. Ms. Guidry and all of the other folks who've been working so hard. Of course, I have to acknowledge Dean Holly, who is here. He is one of our star professors and a person who has always been available to work with us on various programs. Dean Holly, would you show him some love, please? My very dear friend who wears many hats, and he has one on right now. You know of whom I speak. Former president of the university, former dean of the law school, now president of the Houston branch of the NAACP, the Honorable James Douglas. Would you give him some love, please? And I could go on and on and on, but it's impossible for me to do this and not acknowledge the presence of the Urban League, who happens to be right here. After having mentioned Dean Douglas, we have to mention the Honorable Judson Robinson, head of the Houston Area Urban League. Former professor happens to be here, and I have to mention her because I worked with her. When I came to Texas initially, it was to attend law school here at Thurgood Marshall. At that time, it was Texas Southern University School of Law. And I was assigned a professor to work with. That professor was the Honorable Frances Fehrenthal, and she happens to be here today. A great name in Texas history, Frances Fehrenthal. And there are many others here. So let me just do now something that I think is very important. I want you to know that I'm proud to serve you in Congress. It's important that I say this, because I'm going to tell you a few things about what Congress is doing. But it's important that I tell you I'm proud to serve you in Congress. And it's important for me to tell you that I'm proud to serve under the leadership of the Honorable Barack Obama, the 44th President of the United States of America, who has spoken up on these issues. If you love this president and you know it, why don't you show it? I mean, it means something to have a president who will take a stand. Why don't you stand for him and let him know how much it means to you that he takes a position on these issues. Few presidents have ever taken the hard position of standing up for people who have had these kinds of atrocities visited upon them. So thank you very much for honoring our president. I am standing here today as a person who is in sympathy with the family. I am in sympathy with the Bland family. And I'm in sympathy with them because Ms. Bland, who had a bright future, should not have died in the Waller County Jail. She should not have died in that jail because, if at all, she should have been given a ticket and she should have been on her way. We are finding that too many people are dying after having been stopped for minor traffic violations. Tamir Rice was not stopped for a traffic violation. He had a BB gun and lost his life. Walking in the street is not a crime. This is what happened in Ferguson to Mr. Brown. Walking in the street, I went to Ferguson. I went to that neighborhood. I know that that neighborhood is very much like a neighborhood I grew up in where we played in the street. And I assure you, failure to give a proper turn signal, something that I would dare say most of you have done, if you have changed lanes and not put on your turn signal, raise your hand. Isn't it remarkable? We have all done it, if we are honest, and some of us probably did it on the way over here, by the way. But that is an offense that carries with it a fine only. People who change lanes without giving turn signals get fined. They don't go to jail. If you're found guilty, it's a fine. And it is horrific and imponderable that a person would be found to have changed lanes and ended up dead in jail. So we are here today because we want to know what happened to Ms. Bland. It's important that the family know. The family has filed a lawsuit, and let's hope that that lawsuit will cause additional information to be shared with the public. I want you to know that in Congress, we believe, some of us, that body cameras do make a difference. I don't say to you they are perfect, they're not a panacea, they're not the ultimate solution, but they do give us some insight into what's going on when police and citizens interact. And I think we ought to have body cameras on every officer that's going to interact with the public when we have these stops. Which is why we have a bill in Congress called the Cam Tip Act to do just that. The Honorable Emmanuel Cleaver is one of the lead co-sponsors. And we were able to pass a resolution suggesting that municipalities, police departments, law enforcement agencies adopt a policy of having body cameras. We understand that there are some concerns. You've got to deal with how you're going to handle the information. You need proper training, and officers need training. That's a good thing. Training is a good thing, and cameras will help protect officers as well as citizens. But also, we need to make sure that as we move forward, we continue, that the young people continue to march and protest. Now, I'm telling you that it is marching and protesting that is making a difference for people across the length and breadth of this country. And the young people who are out there doing it peacefully, we ought to celebrate what they're doing. This nation was built on peaceful protest. Let's let them continue their peaceful protest. That's the best protest. And I want to leave you with my thoughts on what is happening here tonight. This is a great opportunity. I see my lawyer has just arrived. Everybody ought to have a lawyer. I have three. One of my lawyers is here. The Honorable Benjamin Hall III is in the house. He's my lawyer. But what we are doing here tonight, assembling all of these minds, these students of jurisprudence, par excellence, a good many of them, bringing people together who have insight. State Representative Symphonia Thompson is listed as a member of the program. We have people who have a good understanding of this process. And we want to hear from people who understand the process so that we can understand what we can do best to make sure that these circumstances do not occur in the future. The unfortunate thing is that if I had to prognosticate, I would say this is not the last time we'll be together, although I hope it is. It probably will not be, because there's a lot that needs to be done. And as we go forward, let us take advantage of this opportunity, and let us go forward together, understanding that united we can make a difference in the lives of people that we will never meet and greet, because we can change these policies and procedures and make sure that people are treated fairly and righteously when they are stopped by the police. God bless you. God bless the United States of America, and thank you very much. Welcome, one and all.
Okay.
Welcome, everyone, to the forum. Welcome on behalf of the University, Texas Southern, the law school, and I want to echo the Congressman's thanks to Sarah Guidry and to all of the groups who helped to organize this forum. I think it's easy to have a point of consensus, and that point of consensus is that the death of Sandra Bland was tragic and unnecessary. The unnecessary part of it can probably be parsed out by looking at three things: the stop, the arrest, and the 3-day detention. Was there any justification for the stop, for the arrest, or for this length of detention? Even if there was justification, was it wise to do this? Was it wise actually to stop her under these circumstances, to arrest her under these circumstances, and then to have her remain in incarceration for 3 days? We probably need policies that will produce far fewer stops of this kind, far fewer arrests of this kind, and almost zero tolerance for someone being incarcerated for 3 days under these kind of circumstances. And I think that one of the things that we want to try to strive to do is to look at how things can be changed so those results can become the norm. I also want to mention one other major factor, something that the Congressman alluded to, and that is there is a president who is out front on this issue. And most specifically, he's out front on this issue by appointing a task force early this year, a task force on 21st century policing. And unlike most task forces who probably will have met for the first time by now, this task force has already completed its work. It has a 15-page set of recommendations on local and federal policing to improve what should be done in encounters between the police and citizens. And it also has a pillar of what it thinks should be done, and that is procedural justice. People, when they are stopped by the police, should feel a sense that they will be treated fairly, that there will be respect, that there will be something that is legitimate about the stop, something that they all feel is right about the stop when they are in fact stopped. So there is a move amongst the president's people to try and implement a proposal for procedural justice, and I think it can be one of the hallmarks of what we do locally. In short, a lot of times less is a lot more, and that's the case with, I think, the death of Sandra Bland. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm going to echo both Congressman Green and Dean Hawley. You know, one of the things that, and I just was sitting there thinking, on last Sunday evening, the AME Church had a prayer vigil down at Prairie View, and the Texas bishop delivered the message. Wonderful message, but it was based on the fact, she said she was in Ferguson earlier in the year, and she saw a painting. And the painting was divided in two halves. On the top half was a tree, limbs, leaves, beautiful tree. And the bottom half was roots to that tree. And there was a statement under the bottom of that painting that said, they thought they were burying me, but they only planted a seed. And the whole text was, Sandra's death ought to be a seed. But we know that seeds don't just grow on their own. They require cultivation, they require watering, they require fertilization. That's where we all come in. Change just doesn't happen. Change occurs because we change public opinion. And public opinion doesn't just happen unless we have people out there protesting, marching, demanding change. One person can't do it. Two people can't do it. I'm going to welcome you this evening, but I'm going to ask that each of you make a commitment that you're going to be a social activist for change. We can complain about the problems between law enforcement officials and society, but if we don't do anything about it, if we don't get out there and protest and change public opinion, and I've had young people tell me, I don't vote because it's a waste of time. And then if we don't vote to put people in office who are willing to make that change for us, then we're going to always be sitting around talking about what happened. We can change what happened, but we can't change what happened if we don't do anything about it. So each one of you are going to have to make a commitment that if this is important to you, you're not going to just come to a seminar. All right? You're going to get out there and do something about it. You can look at all the social policy in this country, and the social policy changes come about because we demand change. If we don't demand change, we'll never get change. So on behalf of the Earl Carl Institute, welcome to this discussion, and I hope at the end of the day, all of you will leave committed to being social activists for change. Thank you.
I'm going to ask our first four panelists to come up here and take a seat while I briefly ask the audience. Please look in the packet of materials that you received, and there's a document called Takeaway for Future Strategic Planning. As you hear these panelists speak about some of the issues that are raised in connection with the Sandra Bland case and other criminal justice issues, please start completing that form. If you don't have that form, we'll have some students come in, and if you'll raise your hand, they'll get one to you. On that form, you will have an opportunity to say, I want to be involved. You will have an opportunity to say how you want to be involved. You will have an opportunity to say what you think strategies should be for remedying these issues. And you will have an opportunity on that form for saying, this is our top priority. And I will tell you, our top priority is coming in just a few months, and that's with voting. So please, pull out those forms. If you need a pen, a pencil, we'll get it to you. We want to have you complete those and get them back to us because, as Douglas said, we don't want this to be just where we came and we talked and we talked. We want to go forward from here, and Earl Carl Institute would like to take the lead in moving forward for change. And with that, I'll turn it over to Marlon Smith, our co-sponsor.
First of all, I have to say this because I'm a preacher by first trade, and I need to make sure, is everybody okay? I see people just mad and, lighten up just a little bit. I know why we're here, but, we're here, so we can be okay with that, right? So let me first say, on behalf of Black Greek Speak, my name is Marlon Smith. I am the CEO and founder of Black Greek Speak Social Justice and Human Rights Council. Black Greek Speak Social Justice and Human Rights Council, or we just say BGS, is an education and political studies organization that is dedicated to the issues of social justice and human rights. We call it Black Greek Speak because Black Greeks are leaders in every field of human endeavor. And in this age, in this 21st century age, we want to make sure that we're leveraging the resources, the capacity that we have to affect change in our societies. Let me say this to that point. I want to, while I'm here, first of all, just acknowledge some people. If you are a member of the Divine Nine, please stand up. So when people say we're not doing anything, check them quickly and ask them to join us here in Black Greek Speak, because we do more than step. Don't call us just for stepping. Because the reality is, if it was not for the lovely ladies of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated, none of us would have known about Sandra Bland. So I want to say, first of all, thank you all so much for coming. D9, please continue to work with us in BGS so that we can continue to make sure that other Sandra Blands do not happen in this community. I want to also be one of many to also thank. Brother, we need to help you. You didn't stand up, and I saw you sitting there. So we're going to get you on board. We're going to get you on board. That's all right. I also want to thank really quickly, as others have, Ms. Sarah Guidry and the Earl Carl Institute for their work and their due diligence in making sure that this event came off a success. When we were approached, Black Greek Speak was approached and asked by the ladies of Sigma Gamma Rho, what are you all going to do? They know we do all this work in the community. What are you all going to do now that we've had this issue with our sorority sister? And we contacted Texas Southern University. They put us in contact with Sarah Guidry, and Mrs. Guidry made sure that this event moved not only very professionally, but expeditiously. And I want to commend her for partnering with Black Greek Speak for that effort. I just want to say, as we get ready to bring the panelists up, I've been asked to just make sure that we turn off our cell phones. If you have them on, this is your time check. I've been asked to make sure that everyone turns off their cell phone, or at least put it on vibrate as we get ready to go forward. I'm going to call up our first, we're going to have our panelists come up in 4 segments, and I kind of will tell you what they will do, but I want to call them up first. We have Dwayne Charleston, the former Raleigh County Justice of the Peace. Tarsha Jackson with the Texas Organizing Project. Professor Howard Henderson, Texas Southern University School of Public Affairs. And Kim Milstead, she is with the Department of Justice Community Relations Services in Southwest Region. So, as Ms. Guidry alluded to earlier, that this event was prompted really by the epidemic of police contact with minorities, resulting in an over-aggression and death as symbolized by the recent encounter by Sandra Bland. And I think we want to make sure that what we're saying is that Sandra Bland really serves as a symbol. She serves as a type of representation of how certain communities are engaging with our police. This is not necessarily an indictment on police per se, but it is a way of thinking about how certain communities, particularly black and brown communities, are interacting with police, and we want to be able to think about that, about not only her arrest, but her subsequent death, and what that is, what are the things that we might think about through policy and advocacy, wherein we might begin to affect real change. So our panelists are going to give about 5 to 7 minutes. Let me say to our panelists, I have a person over here who's keeping that little time in front of you. So please watch her so that we can, she doesn't get on me for going over points. So they will give about 5 to 7 minutes, and then we'll have a second half of gathering of feedback and public comments. I also want to be able to direct you to the screen for those of you who are on your cell phones or iPads. We have a virtual communication room going on at hashtag what happened to Sandra Bland TSU, and that way you can ask your questions. We will filter some of those questions from the screen later on, as well as pass out different forms for individuals to ask questions. So we'll be able to do that, as well as provide you opportunity to ask some of those questions and answer some of those questions. What I want to be able to do really quickly, we have Ivan Sanchez, who is here representing Congresswoman Sheila Jackson-Lee's office. He's going to come for just a brief minute on behalf of Representative Sheila Jackson-Lee, and then we'll get started with our panelists.
Good evening. My name is Ivan Sanchez. I am one of the field representatives for Congresswoman Sheila Jackson-Lee. I won't take too much of your time. The Congresswoman wanted to thank you all for all the work you are doing for justice. She sends her regrets for not being able to attend. She currently, right now, is in mid-air, flying back from Nigeria, dealing with homeland security issues, Boko Haram, and all obviously about girls. She also visited the jail where Sandra Bland died about 2 or 3 weeks ago and has extensively seen the videos. Therefore, she has formally requested an intervention by the Justice Department, which I have copies of that letter and I'll be handing out shortly. Again, thank you for your work here. We have a lot of work to do, so let's demand change. Thank you so much.
All right, so I want to be able to tell everyone, our panelists, make sure that your buttons are, your green light is on so that they can hear you. Also, we're streaming online, so that we want to make sure that those who are streaming online can hear us as well. So make sure your green light is on. If it's not, just push that little button and we'll make sure that you get sound. I want to be able to start kind of just a discussion. We've outlined some very particular issues that we just felt like in the planning committee were crucial. I won't go through those, but some of those issues are outlined in the packet that you have, ranging from bail to unconscious bias to pretrial diversion programs and other things that we kind of outlined as essential issues that might need to be addressed within and around this issue of criminal justice and criminal justice reform. I want to start a conversation and allow our panelists to just, and I'll start with, if we can, just all the way down on the other end with Kim Milstead. She's like, "Oh, really?" Yes, and just kind of get her thoughts on what you're thinking and where you sense we might go as a community in relation to this issue.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm Kim Milstead. I'm with the Department of Justice Community Relations Services. And my thoughts is, first of all, we're doing just what we need to start, is an opportunity to begin conversation. And our role in the Department of Justice is serves as a third-party neutral. We're considered the nation's peacemakers. So when there's unrest as it relates to color, national origin, with the recent passing of the James Byrd Shepherd Hate Crime Act, if there are issues based on hate crimes perceived or identified, we come in and we try to engage the community. So I believe we're starting that right now with engaging the community, giving them an opportunity to serve on these panels that we've created, these work groups, to let us know exactly what you feel. And as others have said, whatever actions we take, they should be peaceful in nature. And one of our primary goals is to facilitate conversation between communities, state and local. So that's what I see us doing, and that's what I'd like to continue to offer my services for the community to do just that. My 5 minutes up?
Well, that was good. That was good. Listen, I want to kind of let us get through the panel, and then we'll kind of emerge in a little bit of others. And so as I move to Professor Howard Henderson, I want to, as you speak, I want you to also, if you would, address this idea of how we might begin to bridge our Black intellectual tradition and scholarship with our kind of radical work that we're doing in activism at the grassroots that Kim Milstead was talking about.
I think the reality is that as an academic, we have to be honest about the situation and come out of the classroom and walk the streets. Mm-hmm. We've written too many articles to people who don't listen to it, don't read it, don't know what it's talking about. These are the people who need to hear what we're saying. We also need to talk to people in the streets, and we also be honest with ourselves, because on one hand, we want to hold the police accountable. On the other hand, we want to teach our children how to deal with the police when they encounter them. And that's the honest truth about it. Yes, we have passion. Yes, we have zeal. But if we don't teach our kids how to constrain that in an appropriate manner, then a lot of them are going to end up dead. Mm-hmm. And I won't take all 5 minutes. I'll save that for everyone else.
Well, one of the things that I think is really interesting is, as we're here at Texas Southern, the question was really asked of us, why are you going to Texas Southern, Black Greek Speak? Because we operate mostly in our communities, in our churches, and in our business enterprise centers. And what we thought about was how we might begin the intellectual thinking with kind of the radical grassroots work that young people particularly are engaged in. And Tarsha, I wanted you to kind of speak to that as you are organizing with the Texas Organizing Project, about how we might continue to organize collectively. Sometimes we know how to gather in a group, kind of like a swelling up, but I don't think we necessarily think about the organization of coming together for issues like this.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for having me here. I'm Tarsha Jackson, the Harris County Director for Texas Organizing Project. And as the Congressman said earlier, we have to take to the streets. And we run a lot of things because we go to the street and we organize our community. We in the ground. We actually affected about some of these issues. So basically getting involved, taking it to the streets, and at the same time implementing policy. Policy change is very important.
Speaking of policy change, Dwayne Charleston is the former Waller County Justice of the Peace. And one of the things that was very shocking to me was to find out that the sheriff of Waller County was at one point in time an employee, chief of police in the city. And that situation kind of changed and he got elected. And so I'm just kind of curious, Mr. Charleston, what exactly is the political atmosphere in Waller County, and how we might, what is it we can do to kind of impact or influence that political
I'm
system?
glad they didn't take all 5 of them minutes. You asked me that question. It was about a year ago today, I think, I was in the hospital with my mother, and she was battling cancer. She was in the last days, and she was in the hallway, and I remember she was waiting for some help. And my mother told me, is barely able to talk, and she said, Dwayne, this reminds me of when I was going into labor with Craig, my younger brother. And all of us were born on campus. The first 5 of us were born on the campus there at Prairie View A&M University. And I'm going to get to that, but we were born on the campus at Prairie View A&M University, Prairie View College at the time. And then when Dr. Owens was out of town, when she went into labor with my younger brother, and so they took her to the next city. And when they got to the next city, there were no rooms available for black women who were in labor. And they only had rooms available for white women who were in labor. And my mother was telling me, about this time last year, she said, Dwayne, this reminds me of giving birth to Craig in that utility closet. It's something that we had always heard about. They made my mother give birth to my brother in a utility closet. But as God would have it, he ended up becoming a very, very wealthy doctor. And so, what Satan meant for evil, God meant for good. And then if you fast forward another 40 years, Waller County was mired in this dispute about segregated cemeteries. And I complained for 10 or 15 years about how they would not allow white funeral homes to pick up black bodies, and white funeral homes refused to pick up black bodies, and vice versa. And I complained, and I thought this was crazy that I'm still living in this particular culture. We've marched for voting rights for years, and we've done all of this stuff time and time again. We continue to do it. And the climate is bad. And I don't know what it's like in Houston because I don't get here much, but the climate in Waller County is bad. The climate in small towns all over Texas is bad. It's really, really, really bad. Nobody's interviewed those brothers who are locked up in the Waller County jail because they're still in jail. They can't make bail. And we're sitting here talking about the very thing that Sandy couldn't do, and she couldn't make bail. But if you go back to the climate, you've got a police state in Waller County, particularly in Prairie View. Where Sandy was pulled over, that's a half a mile stretch of property coming from the campus, a half a mile Oh, it's been beautified by the state. It's been beautified, but it's a half a mile patrolled by 5 different police agencies. If I've got some Prairie View students in the house, you can attest to it. Patrolled by 5 different agencies. You've got the campus police. You've got the city of Prairie View. You've got the Waller County Constable, the Waller County Sheriff, the state troopers, and even Harris County came in and arrested me on that street one time. And so you've got over-policing in Waller County, and it's been pervasive. It's continued, and it's always like that. This whole bail system, man, you know, you get a student that steals a $50 book, and then that pumps up that small economy, because when that person steals a $50 book or is accused of stealing a $50 book, some criminal district attorney is going to get paid $700 to be a court-appointed attorney. That's pumping money into the criminal justice system. If that person then bails out, that bondsman is going to jack up, going to call the judge, going to jack up the bail. Is that my bell?
No.
Going to jack up the bell. It's going to jack up the bell. Listen, going to jack up the bell, and they pump another $500-600 into the Waller County economy. And then when they go down to the probation court, because you know we all plea bargain, we're forced to plea bargain, and that's what Sandy probably would have had to do. If she couldn't bail out, she probably would have gotten out and bailed out, and she would probably end up plea bargaining. But what will happen is that they plea bargain, and then you spend another $400 or $500 in probation fees with the county. You're pumping more money. It's the culture. The culture is designed to be run by Prairie View students. They fund that small economy. And so what gets me is that this guy who arrests Sandra Bland, he graduates from Texas A&M, and we've got a criminal justice department at Prairie View, and I don't ever see no brothers patrolling University Drive. It's a culture that just denies African Americans opportunities. I never see it. Now, they created Prairie View because we couldn't go to A&M, and then when we finally get on our feet, they start not only controlling us administratively, they start controlling us criminally. They start patrolling us with police state. It's crazy, y'all. That's the culture in Waller County. That's the absolute culture in Waller County, and I hope that we can do something about it. Right now, you know, I know we're looking for solutions, and somebody's out there drowning. You know, that person out there drowning, they're not looking for somebody to come and teach them how to swim. They need to be pulled to the shore. And I'm telling you, there's a lot of brothers in Waller County. The reason nobody's speaking out, because there's a lot of brothers in Waller County that are caught up in the criminal justice system, and they need somebody to pull them out. We're drowning in Waller County.
Wow. You know, we're going to switch the panel just a little bit in a few minutes, but I just want to have just a few questions that I want to ask a couple of our panelists as we've kind of brought out a few things on the panel. And part of that is because I ran for over 7 years one of the largest prison reentry programs here in the state of Texas at the Carol Vance unit in Sugar Land called the Interchange Freedom Initiative. And one of the things that we tried to do in that program was change not only the mindset of the community, but also the mindset of the men who are in our prison. Because we recognize that if we could let our individual men know that they really do have a voice, and there has been a systematic structure put in place that has stripped them of their voice. And we want to re-engage that. And as I hear Mr. Charleston talk about that seems to me about the diminishing of voice. And so I just want to ask really kind of quickly, and this may be a hard question, is to Kim Milstead, because you're with the Department of Justice, and one of the things I've said constantly is that one of the advantages that Sandra Bland had that many people, many African Americans don't have, is she had a network already. As a member of Sigma Gamma Rho, she already had a network that could give her voice in ways that a lot of other people can't. And so the question becomes, how does someone just driving down the street get the attention of the DOJ when they don't have Sigma Gamma Rho or Texas Southern University or Prairie View University to echo their voice in their communities? How do they get to you?
Relationships that I have in the community. I tried to make myself available to meet some of the folks in these small, these groups, these grassroots groups, and lend myself to them. And typically, I have a relationship with the Houston NAACP, with LULAC. I go out and I really try to keep myself apprised. So that means, like he said, I have to get in the streets. And that's what I do. I walk around. If I hear something's going on, I try to go out there. But typically, folks don't want to hear what I have to say because it takes time, it takes planning. We have to work together. We just can't go and knock a door down and make change. We have policies that we have to follow, but that's how I hear about things. But typically I read the newspaper, I'm surfing the net, I have folks in the community, they know who I am, and they say, well, this is what's going on. I was giving your name and number. I brought many of cards to lay out on the tables because I'm here. I want to be able to make some changes and help. Well, I can't make changes, but I could help the community facilitate, plan, and strategize. So that's how I get involved.
Awesome. Listen, we're going to have our panelists come back up, but we want to make sure that we have a large panel, and we want to make sure that they could all come up and speak. And so we're going to transition for a minute, and then we'll have everybody come back up for a Q&A session, and that way you all in the audience can also ask questions. We have coming at this time Jeanette Harris, Deputy Chief Ramon Green, and Attorney Lewis White.
I think that's your seat right here. She probably got Put your hand in Ramon Green.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and begin with this panel, and I think that one of the unsung heroes in this whole incident regarding Sandra Bland is the person who videotaped her being taken down to the ground. And the person who continued to tape when the police started chasing said, turn it off. She continued to tape. So one of the things that we want to talk about, and we're going to start with Jeanette Harris, is activism through social media.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And I am so proud of you. You know I am. Absolutely. I've been on TV and radio for 17 years, and I've had Congressman Al Green on, I've had Mr. Ben Hall on, and I've had many of you in this room on my show. And a lot of times when they came on my show, different people came on my show, they had never been on that kind of medium before. And so I told them, I said, because our community is so rich, we have such good information in our community, but you have to know you have a right to speak and be heard. And so I tell them, say, I have a right to speak and be heard. And they say, I have a right to speak and be heard. I say it again. And they get a little louder and they say, I have a right to speak and be heard. I say, I need a little more force with that because I want the people to be interested in what you're going to say. And they say, I have a right to speak and be heard. And that's what I want you all to say. I have a right to speak and be heard. Let me tell you how important this is that we do this. You all know or heard of Moses. Well, Moses didn't get a chance to go to the promised land. You know why? And his brother Aaron didn't get a chance to go. In fact, Aaron died immediately. He didn't get a chance to go because God said, I told you not to go and hit the rock. I told you to speak to the rock. I told you to sanctify that in my people. I told you to teach my people how to speak. And that's why it's so important that we no longer be silent, because once you're silent, next thing you're going to be muted. And once you're muted, you will not be able to say anything about anything. So I'm here today to tell you, you have a right to speak and be heard. And in our business, we deal a lot. I sell advertising according to demographics. Who's listening? Who's watching your shows? I come on 7 times a week. Who's watching? Who's listening? Our competition now in television and radio is not other stations. You are our competition. Because each one of you all either got Facebook, an e-blast list, you got a Twitter list, you're on LinkedIn, you're on something. And those are people that are like-minded. Those are the people that you're talking to every day. And with just your list, I don't care. It doesn't matter. If I take Lawrence Payne is here, and I saw another young lady here with the Houston Sun. We have to beg Channel 13, Channel 11, Channel 2 to please put us on. Please tell our story. Because we don't own media. I own Choices with Jeanette, but most people don't own their media. And when you don't own it, the minute Sarah called me, I think I was out there the next day videoing her and putting her on TV just that fast. We got to be able to move like that. So my words to you is to hold 97.9 The Box, the #1 station in Houston. Hold them accountable. Stop playing all that music and don't tell our children to vote. Magic 102. Everybody know about the Breakfast Club. Call them on the rug. And then the last thing, use that video camera you have and go to jlhchoiceswithjeanette.com and send me the video. My son's over there. He's tired. We're constantly recording all the time. Send us the video. Send us the information. I can never touch everybody, but if you'll send it to us, I'll get that information out.
Next we have Chief Deputy Ramon Green with the TSU Police Department, and I think just in terms of putting this panel together, hearing what he had to say had a significant amount of impact on me. The program is about accountability, and he's going to talk about it from the police perspective.
Thank you, Sarah. And I guess I'm in the hot seat up here. I'm the law enforcement executive and the professional here in the room. First of all, welcome to Texas Southern University, the beautiful campus of Texas Southern. I assure you, your safety is our #1 concern while you're here on campus. Do enjoy yourself while you're here. My name is Ramon Green. I'm the Assistant Chief of Police at Texas Southern University. One of the things we talk about, and let me back up a little bit. I would also be remiss if I wouldn't take the time to say my heart goes out to the Bland family and the things that they're having to do and resolve with this situation. When Sarah asked me to participate, I was very hesitant to talk about this, to sit on the panel, because I understand the sensitivity of what we're dealing with here from this position. I look around the room, I see a couple of law enforcement professionals that are in here, people that I do know, people that I admire. Constable Davis is in the house, who was one of my mentors in this profession. I've been in this business for about 22 years, and I submit to you, many of us have dedicated our lives to this profession, and many of us, as you hear and have heard throughout this term from law enforcement community, that 95% of law enforcement professionals really do the right things. But here it is. I'm a realist. I consider myself to be a student of the profession. And one of the things that I see, and one of the things that we have to take accountability for ourselves and our actions is the leadership within our police departments. And this is where I look at it, and I won't speak on this Bland case, but I'll actually speak on the incident. There's a video that's out there circulating the internet now. It's an off-duty detective. Many of you may have seen him. Off-duty detective. He's in the Boston, Massachusetts area. He gets out and he's stopping a car off duty, and he is ranting and raving, and he's using language that was very appalling. And matter of fact, the language he used is somewhat threatening to that. It was right out threats. It was threats made to this driver. And here's where I look at it from a young man that's in this profession for 22 years, endeavoring to pursue higher heights and one day lead a police organization. What I listen to is what leadership says about that officer. So that chief responded only after it hit the internet. You had 4 or 5 officers that made the scene with this off-duty officer. They never said to that young man, sir, you say you was offended? Sir, you said you were done this way? Sir, let me tell you, we got processes. Our process is, number one, there's a complaint. But I also hear that you may have been threatened. Would you like to file charges on this police officer? That's the first thing that should have happened from those line officers. But I bid to tell you, it won't happen if it don't start from the top. That police chief, he got on camera, and he says this. He says, I was surprised to see it. I'm very disappointed of why he done that. I am appalled. This individual has been placed on administrative leave. He is a good officer. And at that point, that's where I say, shame on you. Shame on you, because what happens after that is it was determined that this individual had done it before. Now let's rewind the tape. Here's where law enforcement accountability, and this is where we have to go to. We have to take accountability when we see something that's done wrong in our profession. We need to stand up and say it's wrong. Right then and there from that standpoint. It needs to be clear and concise that that was wrong and those actions will not be acceptable. That's where it has to start. I bid to you and I submit to you today, that's where we're going in our profession. Here's the last thing, and I'm gonna be quiet, and Sarah know I can get on my soap dish about this because I'm passionate about it. We have to go to a new level. We are in a defining moment in our profession. The rubber's meeting the road right now, Congressman. This is what we're going to define us and where we go from here. I know this is being recorded. I got some law enforcement professionals. I said this at church Sunday. I said this is an oxymoron, but this might be a good thing for our profession because it is going to change some things that need to be changed immediately because we can no longer operate the way we operated 20 years ago. Things have changed, and I'll end there and I'll wait for further discussion. But I'll tell you from a law enforcement accountability, this is what you hear from me. It's about leadership, and you and your voices need to be heard when that police chief or assistant chief or any commanding officer get up there and they don't take accountability for actions. It's your voice that needs to be heard to that police department to say, that's unacceptable. And you should make sure it's handled. So I'll end it there at that point.
Thank you. How many of you have heard something about Waller County having appointed a special prosecutor? Well, we have here a gentleman, actually alumni of Thurgood Marshall School of Law, Attorney Lewis White, and he explained to me that I probably put the wrong caption next to his name. So I'm going to turn it over to him to talk about the special prosecutor.
Thank you. First of all, we're not special prosecutors. Let me explain that. What a special prosecutor is someone who starts the investigation, files whatever charge is going to be filed, goes to the grand jury. Grand jury at that time will indict if something needs to be indicted, and they will go to trial and take that case all the way to the end, to a guilty or not guilty. That is not our role. So I want to first clarify that. I was originally asked to be a special prosecutor. At that time, I didn't think that was a good idea. And I have different reasons behind that, and I can't really discuss those at this time. But I will say I thought it was better to put a committee together, okay, and to get some lawyers together to review the evidence and what took place from the stop and what took place at the jail. So at that time, I contacted fellow alum, Mr. Darrell Jordan, to help me put that committee together. At this time, now we have a former professor at TSU, Thurgood Marshall, Sean McDonald, and y'all are hearing this first. So I'm getting the committee together right now, so you're the first ones to hear this. We have Sean McDonald on the committee. He confirmed today. And we also have Mr. Chad Dick, another attorney, okay? And we are waiting to hear from one other person who will be very, very valuable if she commits to the committee. To be completely honest with you, it's hard to get attorneys to do this, to volunteer their time, because we're doing this unpaid, and I actually have a full-time practice, and so does Mr. McDonald, and so does Mr. Jordan. The other person is a municipal judge, so she has that going on, and she also does some civil cases. But she's a former prosecutor as well. We're going to do the best job we can. What we're going to do is we're going to try our best to find out what happened. Okay? I talked to Dean Holly earlier, and it's going to be, the committee can only be so big. So I wanted to limit it to 5 people. But it's some places where we might lack experience. So we want a advisory board of people that have different experience in different areas to help us go over some of the evidence that we receive. We're conducting an investigation ourselves. So that we're going to go to the jail ourselves. We're going to talk to witnesses ourselves. I'm going to speak to Mr. Charleston and figure out where we need to start. I know that you might have heard that this case is going to be taken to the grand jury by the 24th of August. I'm going to be honest with you. That's going to be very tough for us to do. So, as Mrs. Mildred, I think, Milstead, I'm sorry, I don't want to get her name wrong. She spoke about it earlier. Sometimes the process is slow. So please be patient with us because we don't want to rush anything. So if we're not ready to go to the grand jury on the 24th, we're not ready to go to the grand jury on the 24th. Okay? I just want everybody to understand that. I'm going to stop talking right now. So if y'all have any questions, I can't really answer specifics. I can just tell you what we're, the power we've been given and what we've been told that we're given to do. And I just want to say this last thing. This is not something that's normal. So, typically, like I said, it's a special prosecutor and you take the case from beginning to end. That's not this situation. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, we have Representative Symphonia Thompson. Representative Thompson has been very engaged in these issues, and especially with the Sandra Bland case. And I have to say that immediately when we started notifying elected officials, she picked up the phone and called, and she wanted to be a part of this. So we're glad to have her voice here today.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to see so many of my friends, President Douglas, Dean Holly, Sister Parenthal, some of my constituents, Ben Hall, my friend. Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you, when things like this happen, the first thing the community say, where are our elected officials and what are they doing? Well, let me tell you what we have been doing. First of all, we had an opportunity to go down to Waller County and to assemble as a elected body with the Lieutenant Governor, the head of the Department of DPS, the Sheriff of Waller County, the District Attorney is there, and talk about what happened and what led up to the event. We are not investigators, but we did want to know. Interestingly, the Department of Public Safety, Colonel McCross, started out by saying, my officer was wrong. She should never have been arrested. And he escalated the situation. And, that sounds wonderful, but sometimes it makes you wonder why a person is jumping out in front of something unless there's something behind. That's bigger than what you're being told. We did have an opportunity to view the tape, to see what happened that led up to the arrest. And the only thing about that we were not able to see him handcuff her because he took her out of the viewing of the cameras, which raised a question. People said, well, why don't we have cameras on officers' cars? Well, if they're not going to use them and they're going to move out of the view of them, you know, what good are they? We, in addition to that, Senator Ellis and myself, and I subsequently sent a letter to the Department of Justice because black lives do matter. And it's not a black problem, it's an American problem. And America has a problem, has a responsibility to resolve this problem, because we too come under the United States Constitution and the Texas Constitution as citizens who are deserving of the rights of protection. And I am hopeful that the Department of Justice would come in and lend a hand and to be able to participate in the investigation, not because we think that the people in Waller County and within our state are incapable of doing that, but sometimes when a person can come unbiasedly into a situation, they may be able to gather information and do assist in an investigation because there may be some things that would have been missed except for the fact that they have it. Additionally, let me just say to all of us, sometimes when things like this happen, we become very emotional. We get, fired up, and rightfully so. But we all have a responsibility to see that the right things are done and not to wait and stand behind one or two people and expect everybody to shoulder the burden. The cross is for all of us to bear. And we have to pick it up and move forward to it, with it. It is important that things like this don't happen. And there ought to be safety and security in our person when we move about the city, when we move about the state, and to move about the nation, that we too have a right to be protected under this United States Constitution and this Texas Constitution. Thank you.
Okay, at this time we are going to open it up to questions for all of our panelists. Again, I would encourage you to please take out that takeaway sheet and begin filling it in. If you have questions, we ask that you please print them on these index cards and turn them in. Dr. Douglas will be serving as our moderator. And if I could get you guys to come up here, you can ask any questions of any of our presenters.
Some extra seats up here. Slide over a little bit. Want to squeeze in?
Okay, while the panel is getting set, I want to make a couple of comments. It's really, and what you have to do is go back and look at all the situations where we've had unarmed African Americans' lives end in these traffic stops. And you have to ask yourself why. Why these traffic stops? Congressman Green said he didn't think it was illegal to walk in the streets. I have to tell him in Houston it is. If there's a sidewalk, it's illegal to walk in the streets. If there's no sidewalk, most people don't know this, it's illegal to walk on the wrong side of the street. So there are a lot of little things that they stop you for that we don't know we're doing wrong. All right. Little light on the license plate is out. They stop you. Why? They don't care about the light on the license plate being out. They don't care about you walking in the street when there's a sidewalk. They don't care about you walking on the side of the road. They stop you because they want to search you. And they want to search you because they're looking for drugs. Mm-hmm. They're looking for small amounts of drugs and marijuana. All right, so I'm going to tell you, I'm also president of the Houston chapter of the NAACP. One of our big issues, and I was with a group today, and I was trying to explain to them, Brown versus Board of Education did not start in 1950 and 1951. It actually started about 1938. policy changes take time. I believe the ultimate solution is to remove us from the criminal justice system. All right? Why is it a crime to harm yourself? I'm not saying it's right to harm yourself, but why is it a crime? Now, for those of you out there that are lawyers, you know there's a term being called tort. If somebody runs a red light and hits you, negligent tort, you can sue them. The purpose for suing and recovering money is to stop them from injuring you. If you walk down the floor of a store and there's water and they don't properly maintain the floor and you slip and fall, you can sue them. If you leave water on the floor of your house and you slip and fall, you can't sue yourself. You cannot create a tort against yourself. If you can't create a tort against yourself, why can you create a crime against yourself? That's a policy issue. And that's a policy issue we need to begin to address. We need to begin to address why these nonviolent crimes against ourselves, these nonviolent acts against ourselves, why is it a crime? Why did we let society make that a crime? Nearly half the people in prison are there because of some minor drug offense. I just say we make certain drug possession and use non-criminal, you reduce the prison population overnight. Yeah. All right, now with that. You sure will. That's my issue. All right, I am going to ask these questions. I can't understand. What's that? Oh, I don't. And with whom am I supposed to address? Anybody? Oh, the question is, will the federal government? Oh, I want to say one thing else before I go, because I'm on my soapbox. Because there are a lot of people who think, now this is important, there are a lot of people who think my position is wrong. The last two presidents smoked marijuana. Supreme Court Justice smoked marijuana. All right? So mine is, if you eliminate these as crime, we don't even have to have these traffic stops. All right. Will the federal government investigate? That's what they want to hear. Will the federal government investigate? Kim? Yes. What was the question? Will the federal government investigate? Investigate. That's the question. That's what you all asked me to do. That was the first question.
Well, all I can say is my agency, the arm that I work for, we do not investigate, prosecute, nor litigate. So I cannot answer that question if the question was for me to answer. Oh, okay.
All right, this is...
Well, Dean Douglas, I asked for the investigation, and I got documentation to that.
Oh, no, I know.
But it falls within the preview of the United States Attorney General to see whether or not that the actions here at this state level merits them to come in and participate in the investigation.
All right, Representative Thompson, this question is you, and basically is, would you be supportive of legislation, a push for legislation that an officer who voluntarily not use his car cam have committed misconduct?
I think the issue I think the law really should be in the criminal statutes, if I was going to do something like that, and say that that is that would be a affirmative defense to the defendant if an officer failed to do that, rather than prosecuting the officer. And that way, officers who want cases to stick will make sure that they do those things, rather than have those cases thrown out once they are filed.
Now, I guess, Captain Green, maybe this goes to you, and the question is, how do we as black people conduct ourselves when we encounter the police? What are our rights?
I think a few of us can answer those questions that's on this panel. Obviously, you always want to do the right thing by being very cooperative with that police officer. It's very important that you do comply with with giving your license, your registration, and any other information that's required for that traffic stop. Now, here's the thing. I know everybody. Do you have rights? Can you say something? Absolutely. There's nothing in that law that says you cannot say anything, that you cannot smoke while you're in the car. There's nothing there that states that. But to answer your question, my recommendation is to comply, to do everything the officer asks of you and be as compliant as you can. Here's the thing. I love what Professor Howard said. We was in our panel. Try to do your very best to end that traffic stop as fast as you can, and if you feel you were wrong, live to tell about it, and then complain about it. So that's the best way to answer that, for me to answer that question.
The next question is, do we as black people really understand justice? Do we as black people really understand justice?
We understand
you all asked me to ask the questions.
We don't understand that.
Dr. Henderson, I think the question, we're going to try to clarify some of the questions, because I think people are writing quickly. The question, I think, for some people is that the idea of justice as it is practiced by certain individuals and received by certain communities does not always seem equitable. And so the question I think is trying to be asked is, how might we, when we feel a sense of injustice, find a way in which we might seek justice so that we see or feel or sense that that justice is equitable?
Ooh, you flipped that question.
Ooh. We're going to help the millennials because they're asking some questions, so we're going to get it right.
Yeah, he flipped that question real good. I'll say this. I'll say this.
Let's see if he can answer.
Let me say this. I recognize that the brother's real passionate, right? And I don't really know black people if we've ever really seen justice, right? I'm gonna be honest with you, but I don't think any of us know what that really is, right? Because you can be a rich African American and still be treated like the poorest black person there ever is. So let's be honest about that. Number two, we can't even define what justice is, okay? Number three, when this incident happened, it's the umpteenth time we've seen the same thing, and most of us sat on the phone and talked about it like it was the hottest news of the day, right? We all know that there are issues in our community, right? A couple questions. Where are the black police officers on this issue? Number two, why come we don't drug test police officers after incidents like we do truck drivers? There's some critical issues that we need to actually address. Why can't we sit around and talk to each other and we've seen the same thing over and over again and point the finger and blame on someone else? The reality of it is this. This is a new generation of kids, and they don't take to authority like we did in older generations. That's a reality, right? How do you teach these kids how to deal with old school policing, particularly in Texas? Good.
Mrs. Milstead, I assume this is addressed to you.
I want to add something.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
I would like to say the reality of it is our communities are racially targeted. I mean, because of our race. I'm here. I didn't start doing this type of work. 20 years ago, my son was arrested at school for classroom disruption. He was 10 years old. He was sentenced to the minimum length of stay of 9 months in the Texas Youth Commission. He spent 5 years locked up. So I'm here to mobilize community to make sure we continue to fight. So we can sit here and have these forums, we have policy groups, but we as the community have to come together. And we have to demand that our system is changed, because the same thing happened, 15 years ago, is still happening now. So this is personal for me. So we need to get involved. And I just want to say that.
No, I agree with you. Ms. Milstead, why does it take so long for the Department of Justice to decide whether or not it's going to investigate?
First of all, they don't have a right to run in on the state unless there's some egregious civil rights action that has been violated. And this case has not been completely investigated. And if they were invited in, they can come in. But just say, you know, oh, that's a black woman down there.
Right.
We ain't got time to say, hey, be quiet, let us talk. Man, we get started out here. The lady that's from the Department of Justice, every time we call on her, she about to duck on the table. We get started out here. So one of y'all, besides the brother from Waller County and the police, one of y'all speak up and bring these people down.
Hold on. So brother, let me do this, because I get your frustration. I got men in this room right now who were in my prison program were incarcerated for 15 years for things that should have gotten a fine. I get the frustration. But the reality is, what we're doing here is trying to let you know who you need to know. We can't answer this. We can't answer 250 years of oppression in 2 hours.
Right.
So what we need to be able to do here is let people know who's engaged. Let me help you. Earl Carl needs you to sign up and operate with us. BGS needs you to sign up and participate. And whatever your issue is, we'll make sure that it gets to an Al Green. We'll make sure that it gets to a Ben Hall. We'll make sure it gets to a Symphonia Thompson. And if they can't do something, then we'll figure out how to get it to Barack Obama. But we got to first organize. So they're here to help us figure out how we might effectively organize. If there's a question we can't fully answer, give us time after the forum.
My question is that Al Green know me and Ben Hall know me and I'm a member of the National Black United Front. So I ain't sitting on the sideline eating greens. I'm telling you that one of y'all should call the Department of Justice. That's what I'm telling you.
All right, I think Representative Thompson said she's already contacted the Department of Justice.
May I just add something, please?
The brother's right. He does know me. And let me just answer his question. Because he's also right that if ever there's a case that the Department of Justice ought to look into, this is it. So he's right. And we have requested that the Department of Justice look into it. I have personally made the request. Congresswoman Jackson Lee has made the request. I went to the floor of the House of Representatives and stood on the floor of the House of Representatives and demanded that the Justice Department look into this. So now, we all have a role to play. I'm going to play my role. I'm going to do my job. And I'm going to work hard for you, dear brother, because you're right. We have to be accountable. We do. But now there's something else we have to do as well. In meetings like this, there are people who would love to go back someplace and talk about how we devoured each other. Let's not devour each other in the process. Let's find ways to work together in the process. Now, this is important. I want to work with you, but we have to work with each other. And finally, one more thing. I want to say this. I made a little bit of a note here because I'm standing right next to my compadre and my very dear friend. Parading in the street is a crime. But in your neighborhood, people can stand in the street and talk. And that's what happened in Ferguson. And Michael Brown should not have lost his life for standing in the street and talking to another person. That's what I'm talking about. And I'm standing here, I'm not leaving. I will be here to answer additional questions. I'm not on the panel, so I couldn't just walk into it. I was waiting to be invited, but once I saw that I wasn't going to get the invitation, my invitation got lost in the mail, so I'm here. God, well, hold on, brother.
I'm taking my son to the restroom.
You're going to give me some love before you go.
You want me to ask something? Okay. I guess this goes to the planners. Why are there no young people on the panel?
I'm young. I think I want to take offense that I'm not young, but
I definitely think I'm young.
I'm young. What? I'm middle-aged.
So let me say that because we want to be fair to the millennials who are really engaged in this, particularly online, who are tweeting, and that's one of the questions. This is not the be-all, end-all. This is the beginning, and we did look for ways to get millennials engaged, but one of the things that we also wanted to do was we wanted to get the people who had power to help us affect the change. So we needed to let them know that this is what we're doing. So we're not leaving the millennials out. That's why you're on Twitter and Facebook and streaming, so that you can know, and you're here in this room. But we needed you to know who your power players are, because millennials, we need you to know who your elected officials are. Because if you don't know who your elected officials are, then you can't begin to access them. So we just needed you to know who the people in power were, so that when you tweet, when you chat, when you Facebook, whatever you do, Instagram, that you know who you need to talk to. Because we got to move from just talking about it to doing something about it. Okay. So power, we're going to let Dr. Henderson, how about that? Dr. Henderson, what is the idea of power?
I guess I'm the Webster for the night.
Yeah.
Those are the ones that I've already asked.
Once again, I don't think we know what power is either, because if we had power, we wouldn't be in there talking, right? We would be out there making sure that our kids don't die anymore, and we'd hold police and politicians and everyone else who subjugates black people responsible. We haven't done that yet. When do we do it? When do we expect people to do what we're paying them to do? That police officer that arrested that girl, and we think illegally, he's paid by us. We're financing our own demise and don't even realize it. We have to act like we're no longer on the plantation and be real about the situation. I'm going to stop right there.
Let me just add a couple of things.
Okay.
We all are concerned tonight about this situation, and we have been ever since it happened. But we don't have any benchmarks in place that we want people to address over a long period of time. When I was a student here as an undergraduate student, I sat in the sit-down strike right down there on Alameda and Sophomore and Madden's drugstore, and we had white people coming there with shotguns to shoot us off of the stool. I was married, and I married a guy who was much older than myself, who was sending me to school, and I had 2 children. And he would tell me every day when I left home, don't go down there and mess with those white folks. Come home after school. And I would tell him I would, but I would go down anyway and sit down between classes until I was exposed on television one day while I was at home at dinner with him, biggest day, sitting on that stool. But you know what? We had a goal. And we did not, Reverend Lawson was with us. We didn't tell him, Reverend Lawson, you go down there and sit. We did it ourselves. We participated. We didn't leave it to someone else to handle. Elected officials have to have your support and your help. And the number one power that we have taken it and put it on the shelf and let it collect dust. The power of the vote.
You know, Representative Thompson made a statement, because I was also in college during the 60s and talking to my friends who made the same statements that the young adults make now, we were making. And I said to them, do you realize why we are the ones out there in the streets? Because if we get arrested, what do we miss? We miss a class. If your father gets arrested, what does he miss? He loses his job, then he can't pay the mortgage, he can't pay your tuition, and you can't get out there and march either. So if you look at revolutions around the world, it is young people who lead revolutions. It's not old people who are supporting other people. All right? All right, now the next question. What is the process for filing a complaint against an officer? Where do you start?
The family has filed a lawsuit.
All right, one, you can file a lawsuit.
Yeah, the process of filing a complaint through the police department, most police departments have complaint forms. Let me digress a little bit and back up and let me give an example. And here's that law enforcement accountability part again. You know, we spoke about that officer arresting Sandra off camera. And here's where your voice needs to be heard to that leadership, because there should be policy in place that says all arrests should be made in front of the camera. And if there's exigent circumstances which precluded them from being arrested, then it should be documented in that report. And here's what we say. So just as if we're talking about that policy in terms of how to affect arrest with the use of force, and it should be done on camera, and any exigent circumstances that preclude you from doing it, it should be all spelled out in that report. That's your job. If you see that, go to that leadership and say, why is that not happening? That should be addressed to the leadership, just as a complaint. Every police department has a complaint policy. They have an internal affairs police in that department. And if they don't, then it's your responsibility in that community to make sure that they do, to hold them accountable, making sure they have complaint policies in place. So most police departments, as a Texas Southern University Police Department, if you want to file a complaint, you come over, you'll get a complaint form that's referred to myself and the chief of police. We look at it, and if it requires an internal investigation, it goes to our internal investigations division, and from there it progresses to whatever happens to that officer, where it's exonerated or disciplinary processes takes place.
And one of the things, and I see Darrell out there, you have to know, one of the things that they pushed for was body cams on policemen. Pretty quickly, we're going to have body cams on every Houston policeman. For those of you who saw the report in the last few days about what happened in Cincinnati, the murder charge that was in an indictment against the University of Cincinnati police officer who killed an individual, is that the body cam clearly demonstrated that the police officer filed a false report. And so those body cams, I think, are going to make a difference. It's not going to clear up all the answers, because I think Rodney King and those other cases will show you that sometimes, even when it's caught on camera, the juries won't convict. Next question, what are the strategies for change?
I'll start with one. In my capacity, when I go out to the communities, I solicit community members to meet with me, to meet with law enforcement. Now, I sympathize with the family, but one thing we all have to understand, we have to make changes for our future. And when they talk about people of power, as I said, I was there trying to get community members to meet with law enforcement, because you've got to sit down, someone's got to sit down at the table and let their voices be heard. So those are the ways that I work in the community to help them create strategies. And that's one thing that we need to do. Like we say, the millennials, come to the meeting, get engaged with those folks to create some change and some strategies.
You had to come in.
I'd like to say, with respect, and I'm going to go back to Waller County, when you start talking about change, it starts in a democratic society, clearly at the voting box. In 1979, the Supreme Court assured Prairie View students the right to vote in Prairie View. That was a court order, and over the next 10, 15 years, probably 15 people have been indicted related to voting rights, voting campaigns and initiatives. We marched in 2004 and 2008. Sandy marched in 2008. I remember Congressman Al Green was there, and Sissy Farenthold. I remember just thinking, oh my God, Sister Farenthold was here, and it was incredible. But we marched there, and the Justice Department came in after Oliver Kitzman threatened to arrest students, and they slapped them on the wrist. A few years later, they came back in, and they denied Prairie View students the right to vote, and the Justice Department came in and slapped them on the wrist. And so what happened, eventually, after all of this time, it took the Supreme Court to create an injunction to stop them from messing with Prairie View students. And every time they continued to mess with Prairie View students and offend Prairie View students, as Prairie View students were trying to create change by engaging in the political process, they slapped Waller County on the wrist. They knew they could slap Sandy Bland's head on the ground because the Justice Department only slapped them on the wrist. And so we can try to go change, but how many of those Prairie View students, how many of any of us are going to go and file a complaint in Jasper, Texas at the Sheriff's Department? How many of us are going to go to Waller County and file a complaint at the police department, and your cousin is on probation and behind on their probation fees? I mean, get real with this thing, man. You know, it starts with the Justice Department coming in and having some potency in terms of their investigations and coming in and doing more than slapping on the wrist, because every time they walk in and they slap somebody on the wrist, that's license for that jurisdiction to continue to slam somebody's head against the ground. I believe that the Justice Department has a little bit of blood on his hands on Sandy Bland.
All right, this is a question from Twitter. How do you change the mindset of a community? How do you change the mindset of a community?
Let me say this. The reality is we have a videotape where 2 police officers said they saw the guy drag the police down the street.
Right, Cincinnati.
And they just came back and said, okay, we're not going to do anything to him. We didn't do anything about that. We just said, oh, okay, that's business as usual. We can't change our mind because we don't really know what we want to do with it. And what I mean by that is we got different agendas. We just watched the Hispanic culture cost Donald Trump millions of dollars, okay? We ain't cost Waller County no money, right?
Not at all.
As a matter of fact, some of us gave them some money when we bought gas going and leaving from that place. Right. We need to actually organize and stop talking about what we're going to do. That's the reality. We have to stop arguing and fighting with each other about what we're going to do. We have no vision. And until we actually unify on what we need to do, we might as well be quiet.
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to add to that on the Donald Trump situation with the Spanish community. I call Univision the governor of the Spanish people. I call that's my own personal joke, that's their governor. Because when Univision said, we don't give a darn what you do, Donald Trump, the community followed. And that's what I'm saying to you about media. They're strong in media.
All right. They tell me I can't take, you got to write it down. Is there a phone or hotline if you find yourself locked up unjustly to get someone to review your case? Anyone on the panel want to address that? Hold up, no, they told me I'm not supposed to have people from the audience talking, so I'm trying to, look, sir, I have a whole handful of cards of people who followed instructions. Next question. Do you support a civilian independent review based with subpoena power and prosecutorial power? And that's from anyone on the panel. Anyone on the panel?
I think that's good because it will give an independent view and independent thoughts. Because it's difficult, in my opinion, for somebody to investigate themselves or to review themselves if they're the one that that being accused of perpetrating a crime or wrongdoing.
Next question. Did you want to comment?
Yes,
on that?
I think that there ought to be an independent prosecutor. And brother, I respect the fact that he called and asked you guys to be on this oversight committee. But I would ask the question: does that preclude that you don't have prosecutor powers? Does that preclude you from now going back again and making that recommendation for an independent prosecutor? And furthermore, on the overview, I would just like to say real quick that I really think they ought to have, or you guys should bring a student on that oversight committee. I think you ought to have a student on that oversight committee.
What part do you want me to respond to first?
Whatever you like.
Okay.
Whatever you like.
Okay. First, you talk about taking something to the grand jury. That's why it's a group of attorneys, because you have to. Any attorney can tell you when you start off an investigation. Any former prosecutor can tell you. You have to be able to build a case. If you're going to build a case, because I don't know what the evidence is going to show, because as I said, we just started the investigation.
No, only spoke about independent prosecutors, and I spoke about independent prosecutors and a student.
That's what I'm talking about, the student.
Okay.
That's why I'm referring to the student.
Okay.
First, when you're talking about a special prosecutor, I can't tell the DA to recuse himself.
But he asked you if you want to be an independent prosecutor. He asked you.
No. Listen what I'm telling you. I can't tell him to recuse himself. When you have a special prosecutor, that special prosecutor takes over everything. And he becomes, then typically what happens when they do special prosecutor, that special prosecutor comes from another district attorney's office. So if you have a special prosecutor, typically, that's not going on with the Ken Paxton case, but typically that prosecution comes from, say, Fort Bend, or say from Harris County.
It doesn't matter. You said he asked you to serve as a special prosecutor.
Yes.
So if he asked you to serve as a special prosecutor, it is clear that he was open to a special prosecutor, and you were in a position to say, I can't do that, but I think that the community would like to have it. And so I'm saying,
when he said, and let me just get, and like I said, everybody, including him, because I think Elton is the one who started the special prosecutor comment, right? And when I got here, I wanted to make sure that everybody understood what our role was. When he said special prosecutor, he's not referring to what a special prosecutor really is. And that's what I'm trying to explain to you, what a special prosecutor really does. He was saying for me to come work with them and review the case. He wasn't telling me that he was going to step down from the case. You understand?
That was what I...
Yeah, that's why I wanted to explain. That's why I was trying to explain to everybody that he didn't resign from the case and invite in and say, I'm going to have somebody from Harris County come on take over this case. That's what you're asking. That's what you want, right?
Yes. Okay. Not from Harris County.
I mean from any. I'm just saying that's what typically happens.
Okay. I'm with you.
Yeah.
All right. Next question. How can a student, activists, and millennials best affect change in our community?
Look at Sandra Bland's Facebook page and the power of the social media. And that's what she really encouraged everybody to do. And I think that's a good starting point.
All right, next question. Is it time to stop marching and take a different route? The strategies of the past are not working.
I think we have marched way too long. I think the march has to be different now. Right? I mean, it's a different reality. These kids are watching the adults for the example. And some of these adults didn't march in the 60s and they're not going to march now. I think that's the sad reality that we face. And so I think we have to let them come up with the strategy and we have to support them, because during the last civil rights movement, everybody went to jail. We no longer go to jail anymore.
Excuse me. Now, please, All right, you all asked me, no, you all asked to ask questions. These are questions from the audience.
Young people right now. Y'all really are.
Well, I don't know who wrote the questions, but what is the code of silence among police? All right, thank you. What is the code of silence among police?
We finished. Okay. I don't mean to interrupt.
Tell them that that's a table.
You have to understand that, number one, I understand that you're pissed off. I understand that you feel like you're pissed off. But you gotta be able to be in a position to where you can disagree and not disintegrate. And that's exactly what's happening right now. You got people that are walking out of the auditorium. You have people that feel like they're not being heard. You have questions that are being laughed at. You got people that are mocking. This is what makes black folks in this community be in the position that they are in. There is a time and a place for everything. I am a two-time graduate of this university. And this university has taught me a great many things. And one of those things is to be respectful and to understand that we all have to get along. We're not going to get everything solved tonight. It's just not going to happen. You're dealing with 400 years of oppression. You're not going to be able to deal with it in 2 hours. It's just not going to happen like that. They're telling you that you need to vote. So what you need to do is you need to talk to Representative Al Green or Congressman Al Green, and you need to say, how do we get election education classes in the community? How do we get our kids the textbooks that they need? How do we teach them the history that they need to learn? How do we get our kids out here and be active protecting themselves? That's what you need to be talking about right now. But you can't get frustrated. You can't walk out.
Thank you. Thank you. Go ahead.
I just want to say, and I agree with you 100%. You guys got to realize, you know why all this change is taking place? It's because of the media. That's who has the power. It's because of these cameras that's telling the real story. That's the number one. So you guys, when you have black media in the room, from the radio station, the Sun, we can tell our own story. Guess what? All these other stations, they recording. And guess what? When they report the news, they just say the African American can't come together. So that's what they say. So you guys, we gotta understand and tell our own story and support our own media, so we can tell what to do when stuff happens. You know, it don't make sense. My son, I was just the other night, didn't know about the law that he just pulled over. He's supposed to get over in another lane when a police officer there got pulled over. Had my grandbaby in the car. And he realized that he was a black young man at that time. Because he called his mother called me and recorded the conversation. Just to know that it don't make sense that we as black people, and I mean, a young African American who just graduated has a fear of getting stopped by the police. It don't make sense. And you're right. The media, you guys need to support black media. Every facet of it, because that's who tell our story. And we need to understand that's who has real power. These cameras. If it wasn't for these cameras, nobody would be on these cameras. That's right. So the young folks, they understand the power of this phone. That's right. And that's what we need to understand media.
Right. Let me do this, because I've been given the signal that time is up. But let me say something in closing. Let me say something in closing, because you're going to go to a lot of forums. You're going to go to a lot of forums. When you go to forums, people are going to ask questions. Everybody's question is not going to be your question. But when you go to a forum, you have to be prepared to listen to other people. Everybody's not going to say what you want to say, but you have to be prepared to listen. And one of the things that I know is that we're not going to get anywhere if we don't do things collectively. And so in order to do things collectively, we're going to have to be willing to compromise and listen to other people. So I've been asked to close out. I want to thank all of you for coming. And remember, as I said earlier, all right, commit yourself to becoming a social activist.